Marco Rubio is the Republican Party's golden boy right now. He's not as controversial as Trump or Cruz, but he's not quite reasonable enough to go completely unnoticed by the Tea Party. Indeed, it seems like... Much better. This is why Marco Rubio will never be president. Howdy gang. Marco Rubio was elected to the Senate during the Great Republican Wave of 2010. Now when I say great, I don't mean like Great Gatsby great or Great Gazoo great or even like, oh, great, a spatula. Thanks, Dad. See you next Christmas. Great. I'm talking more like the Great Chicago Fire or the Great Dying, where 250 million years ago, literally most species died. That kind of great. What should have been a close race in a swing state between a Democrat and a Republican ended up being a Marco Rubio landslide because, as usual, Charlie Crist came and screwed everything up. Okay, real quick, a little mini video. This is why Charlie Crist screws everything up. Howdy gang, Charlie Crist is one of the most blatant political opportunists I've ever heard of. He was the Republican governor of Florida starting in 2006, but I suppose he got bored or something because he ended up running for US Senate in 2010 instead of re-election. He was on track to get the Republican nomination, but was eventually overtaken by then Tea Party darling Marco Rubio. Now at that point, Charlie Crist could have said, you know what, I'm done, and packed up his bags and gone back to being a governor/loser. But instead, he ended up changing his political affiliation to independent and kept friggin' running for Senate. So at that point, Republicans were like, okay, screw you, Charlie. We don't trust you. We're going with the handsome Latino guy. So then Charlie Crist just ended up splitting the Democratic vote between him and the Democratic candidate, Kendrick Meek, who, contrary to popular belief, is not the epic love child of Kendrick Lamar and Meek Mill. Though, as a politician, all his life he wants money and power, and I bet he could even write a better Drake diss. But the point is that Marco Rubio ended up crushing both of them in the general election, and at that point, Charlie Crist could have then been like, okay, I get it, no one wants to vote for me, it's fine. But he didn't do that. Instead, he changed his political affiliation again to Democrat, and in 2014 ended up running for governor against the man he inadvertently allowed to be governor, Rick Scott. Now, if you're not familiar with Rick Scott, Chief Floridian Correspondent Juan Escalante put it best.
Rick Scott, who I'm convinced isn't even a human being, but some weird Terminator Voldemort hybrid wearing counterfeit human skin.
Anyway, Charlie Crist lost that election too, probably because Rick Scott looked into the eyes of some of his supporters and turned them to stone. But now, Charlie Crist has just recently announced that he's running again for a seat in the House of Representatives as a Democrat. Unless, of course, he loses the primary, in which case he might just give the rent is too damn high party a shot.
This is politics as usual. Playing a silly game. It's not going to happen. The rent too damn high movement, the people I'm here to represent can't afford to pay their rent.
This has been why Charlie Crist screws everything up. Thank you, Chandler. And as it was mentioned, Marco Rubio was once considered a pretty solidly conservative candidate, backed by the Tea Party. But in an era of Trumpflation where rhetoric is given more weight than record, Marco Rubio just kind of feels like a moderate with his high-heeled boots and water-sipping ways.
Nothing has frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big business.
Look, I know I already brought this up earlier in the video, but come on, Marco! This was your big chance to reveal yourself to the American people, and you blew it! You either A, needed to not drink your water for like the 7-minute speech you had to give, or you should have had it right in front of you and drank it confidently like it was something you intended to do. Instead, you nosedived down to the floor, grabbed a tiny water bottle, maintained eye contact with the camera, kept looking back and forth as if to say, do you think the American people are noticing this right now? And then nosedived back down to put the water bottle back. Super weird. I think most people have forgotten about it by now. But Marco Rubio did invoke it at one of the CNN debates.
I'm also aware that California has a drought, and so that's why I made sure I brought my own water.
That was a cute joke, but it came off a little bit like Rubio was bragging he had water and the people of California didn't. Which I guess is an effective tactic to seem likable at a Republican primary. The point is, Rubio recovered from Watergate and has since risen to 3rd place in the polls, making him the #1 establishment candidate. As the best polling candidate who isn't a smarmy, arrogant cartoon villain, Rubio is now facing attacks from the other electable candidates. For example, his fellow Floridian Jeb Bush recently pointed out his poor attendance record in the Senate.
Marco, when you signed up for this was a 6-year term. And you should be showing up to work.
You're modeling your campaign after John McCain, You know how many votes John McCain missed when he was carrying out that furious comeback that you're now modeling it under?
He wasn't my
No, Jeb, I don't remember. Well, let me tell you, I don't remember you ever complaining about John McCain's vote record. The only reason why you're doing it now is because we're running for the same position, and someone has convinced you that attacking me is going to help you. Here's the bottom line. My campaign is going to be about the future of America. It's not going to be about attacking anyone else on this stage. I will continue to have tremendous admiration and respect for Governor Bush.
Solid response. Little did Rubio know that it would come back to bite him. And in fact, he was bitten by someone who's quite used to consuming things the size of Marco Rubio.
Unfortunately, Governor Christie has endorsed many of the ideas that Barack Obama supports.
You know, I stood on the stage and watched Marco and rather indignantly look at Governor Bush and say, someone told you that because we're running for the same office, that criticizing me will get you to that office. It appears that the same someone's been whispering in old Marco's ear, too. And 2 years ago, he called me a conservative reformer that New Jersey needed. That was before he was running against me. Now that he is, he's changed his tune. I'm never going to change my tune. I like Marco Rubio. He's a good guy, a smart guy.
I love this weird new debate tactic. Hey, you keep attacking me, and for that, you're a slimy, opportunistic pile of scum. But I still like ya. Taking the high road. Indeed, Bush, Christie, and Kasich are all jockeying for Rubio's spot as the top establishment candidate. But right now, all four of them are splitting the sane person vote in the Republican Party, which is pretty limited in this current electorate. So, until 3 out of 4 of them drop out, Tweedledee and Tweedledetestable are going to remain at the top of the field, and we're going to keep seeing attack ads like this one.
Are you ready, Marco's boots? Start flipping!
I know I haven't really criticized anything substantive about Marco Rubio during this video, but as you can see, these other candidates aren't placing substance very high on their list of priorities. Not when the current Republican frontrunner, who 30% of the electorate has agreed is more qualified to be president than Marco Rubio, has addressed the real issue at hand.
Did you ever see a guy sweat like Rubio? I've never seen anything like it.
He sweats more than any young person I've ever seen in my life.
He's sweating like a pig. I never saw a guy sweat like this. The sweat is pouring down.
And, I guess, that is why Marco Rubio will never be president.
How about a chest bump?
Where the hell did that come from? There's no indication that this person implied a desire to chest bump, and yet Jeb Bush offers it out of the blue. Also, who initiates a chest bump by being like, how about a chest bump?